The house felt different when I walked in that night. It wasn't the smell of dinner or the warmth of a home waiting for its owner to return. It was colder, emptier, like a place where I didn't quite belong. The faint sound of music played upstairs, something soft, unfamiliar. The lights were dim, only the glow from the kitchen casting long shadows over the hardwood floor. I set my keys down carefully, listening. Nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant murmur of running water. Emily had told me she'd be home all evening. She wasn't going out, no plans, just a quiet night in. But there were 2 wine glasses on the counter, one with a smudge of lipstick that wasn't hers. Emily never wore lipstick, always said she hated how it felt. The other glass had been knocked slightly to the side, as if placed down hastily, maybe in the middle of a conversation or an argument. I touched it. Still warm. I moved through the house slowly, each step measured. The floor creaked under my weight, the kind of sound you only notice when you're trying to be silent. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and looked up. The water had stopped. The music was still playing, low, almost blending into the air itself. A faint rustling came from behind the bedroom door. My heartbeat picked up, the steady thud in my chest growing louder than the music. For a moment, I thought about walking away, just turning around, leaving the house, pretending I hadn't seen the glasses, hadn't noticed the small details that suddenly felt like neon signs screaming at me. But I had to know. I climbed the stairs, each step deliberate. The door was slightly ajar, enough to see inside without being seen. Emily stood by the closet, her back to me, slipping something into a drawer. She moved quickly, like someone trying to hide evidence before they were caught. Her hair was damp, strands sticking to the back of her neck. She was wearing a silk robe, one I had bought her 2 years ago for our anniversary, but she never wore it for me. Emily. She froze. Her hand lingered in the drawer for a second too long before she slowly turned around. There was a flicker of something in her eyes. Shock, guilt, calculation. She recovered quickly, offering a small, tight-lipped smile. "Oh, hey," she said, as if I had just come back from the store instead of standing there, staring at her, knowing something wasn't right. I stepped forward, glancing toward the bed. The sheets were slightly rumpled, like someone had been sitting there moments before. My eyes moved back to her, searching her face for any sign of a lie. "You said you were staying in tonight." My voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "I was," she said quickly, too quickly. "I just had a glass of wine while watching a movie." "With someone?" She hesitated, just for a second, but I caught it. "No, of course not. Just me." I turned my head toward the dresser. The bottom drawer was still slightly open. A black leather wallet stuck out just enough to be noticeable. I didn't have to ask. I didn't have to look inside. I knew. Emily saw where my eyes had landed and let out a slow breath, her body stiffening like she was preparing for a fight. "Daniel." "Who?" My voice was quieter now, more controlled, but she heard the weight in it. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her jaw tightening. She could have lied. She could have made up a name, pretended it was innocent. But she didn't, because we both knew the truth was already in the room with us. Emily didn't say a word as I walked past her and reached for the drawer. Her fingers twitched slightly, like she wanted to stop me, but she didn't. She just stood there, her arms crossing over her chest, watching me with an expression that hovered somewhere between defiance and fear. I pulled the drawer open completely, and there it was, his wallet. Black leather, simple, worn just enough to show it had been used often. I picked it up, feeling the weight of it in my hands, flipping it open before she could say anything. Inside, a driver's license. The face staring back at me was familiar, but I couldn't place him immediately. Short dark hair, a strong jawline, mid-30s. His name was printed clearly beneath his photo, but I didn't need to read it. I already knew what this meant. This wasn't something innocent. There was no reasonable explanation. I could feel Emily's eyes on me, waiting to see what I would do. "Who is he?" My voice was steady, but there was something behind it, something restrained, something dangerous. Emily shifted her weight slightly, her fingers gripping the edge of the dresser. "Daniel, just put it down." I turned the wallet in my hands, flipping through it. Credit cards, a few receipts, a folded-up piece of paper with numbers written in quick, messy handwriting. A hotel reservation. The date was yesterday. My stomach clenched. I had been home yesterday. "Say his name." She swallowed, her jaw tightening, her lips pressing together like she was forcing herself to stay silent. I could see the fight happening inside her. She wanted to lie, wanted to come up with something that would soften the impact. But there was nothing she could say that would make this less damning. I held the wallet up slightly, letting her see it clearly. I'll ask one more time. Who is he? Emily exhaled slowly, her shoulders sinking. David. The name meant nothing to me. I flipped back to the ID. David Marshall. Still nothing. But it didn't matter. He had been here. In my home. In my bedroom. Drinking wine with my wife. I placed the wallet on top of the dresser, feeling the weight of my own pulse in my temples. My hands itched to do something, to grab something, to break something, but I forced myself to stay still. How long? Emily looked away, her gaze dropping to the floor. Daniel. How long? She hesitated, then let out a short breath. A few months. A few months. Not a one-time mistake. Not a drunken lapse in judgment. This was something that had been happening behind my back for months. While I had been working, while I had been taking care of the house, while I had been sleeping next to her every night, she had been doing this. I took a step back, needing space, needing air. I ran a hand over my face, trying to process everything, trying to keep my thoughts from spinning too fast. So what? You invite him over when I'm not home? Pour him a glass of wine. Let him sit on my couch, sleep in my bed. Her head snapped up at that, her eyes wide. No, Daniel, it wasn't. Don't. I shook my head. Don't try to downplay it. Don't try to make it seem like less than it is. I need the truth. Emily rubbed her hands together, like she was trying to warm them, like she was trying to comfort herself. It's not like I planned this, she said, her voice quieter now. I didn't go looking for it. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Right? It just happened. She didn't argue. She just stood there, staring at the floor, her breathing uneven. Where is he now? Emily hesitated, and that was enough of an answer. He was close. Maybe still in the house. Maybe outside, waiting for her to text him, waiting for her to tell him it was safe. My hands curled into fists at the thought of it. I turned toward the bedroom door, ready to walk out, ready to check every inch of the house if I had to. Emily's voice stopped me. Daniel, please don't. I turned back to her, my eyes sharp. You don't get to ask me for anything right now. She flinched slightly, her arms tightening around herself. I walked out of the bedroom, my heartbeat loud in my ears, my movements sharp, purposeful. If he was here, I was going to find him. And when I did, he was going to regret ever setting foot in my house. I moved quickly, stepping out of the bedroom and into the hallway, my ears tuned to the slightest sound. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the muffled sound of my own breathing. I scanned the hallway, my mind racing through possibilities. If he wasn't here, he had left in a hurry. If he was still here, he was hiding. Either way, I wasn't going to let this slide. My feet carried me down the stairs, my steps firm, deliberate. The living room was empty. The front door was locked from the inside. The back door, too. I turned my head toward the hallway that led to the downstairs bathroom and the small laundry room. A space too tight to hide unless someone was desperate. I pushed the bathroom door open. Nothing. The laundry room was dark, the faint smell of detergent in the air, but no signs of movement. I clenched my jaw, stepping back into the main living area. Then I heard it. A slight creak, barely noticeable, coming from the garage. My hands curled into fists as I moved toward the door that led to it. I twisted the handle, pushing it open, stepping into the dimly lit space. The scent of oil and old cardboard filled my nose. My car sat where I had left it that morning, untouched. A few storage boxes were stacked against the far wall, along with old furniture we never used. And standing near the side door that led outside was a man. David Marshall. He was taller than I expected, maybe 6 foot, dressed in jeans and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He had short, dark hair, slightly messy, like he had run his hands through it too many times in the last few minutes. His face was sharp, his jaw tight, his eyes locked onto mine as I stepped fully into the garage and closed the door behind me. Neither of us spoke right away. He just stood there, his body tense, like he was debating whether to run or explain himself. My hands twitched at my sides, my breathing steady, controlled. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do first. Ask him why he thought he could walk into my home or knock him to the ground for doing it. You've got a lot of nerve, I finally said, my voice even, my anger pressing against the edges of my control. David exhaled, his hands coming up slightly, like he was trying to show he wasn't a threat. Look, no. I cut him off, taking a step closer. You don't talk. You don't get to explain anything to me. He swallowed, shifting slightly, his back pressing against the door like he was preparing for me to hit him. I wanted to. Every instinct in me told me to put my fist through his jaw, to make him feel just a fraction of the humiliation, the rage that was tearing through me. But I wanted answers just as much as I wanted to break him. How long have you been coming here? I asked, my voice low, measured. David hesitated, his eyes flicking toward the closed door behind me. Daniel, I swear to God, if you say my name one more time like we know each other, you're not walking out of here without bleeding. His mouth shut, his jaw tightening. He let out a slow breath, glancing down before finally answering. A few months. I felt my fingers curl into my palm, so tightly my nails dug into my skin. A few months. The same answer Emily had given me. I wanted to believe that was the whole truth, but people like them didn't deserve the benefit of the doubt. Here, I asked, tilting my head slightly, my eyes locked onto his. In my house. David exhaled sharply, looking like he wished he was anywhere else but here. He nodded. A sharp, hot wave of rage surged through me, but I forced my hands to stay at my sides. In my bed. This time, David hesitated longer, his throat bobbing as he swallowed. He didn't nod, but he didn't deny it either. That was all I needed. Before he could react, I lunged. My fist connected with his jaw, sending him stumbling backward into the door with a loud thud. He groaned, his hands coming up defensively as he tried to steady himself. Wait, just. I grabbed him by the front of his shirt, slamming him against the door, my face inches from his. You came into my house, I said, my voice sharp, cutting through the thick silence of the garage. You drank my wine, sat on my furniture, and touched my wife. And you thought I wouldn't find out. David's hands hovered near my arms, but he didn't fight back. He knew he had no right to. It wasn't like that, he muttered. I shoved him harder, my grip tightening. Then tell me, David, what was it like? He didn't answer. He just looked at me, his face tense, his breath uneven. He wasn't sorry. Not really. He was just caught. I released him abruptly, shoving him toward the door. Get out. David straightened, rubbing his jaw where my fist had connected. He hesitated, like he wanted to say something, but thought better of it. He reached for the door handle. I took a slow step forward, making sure he saw the promise in my eyes. If I ever see you near my house again, if I ever hear that you've talked to Emily again, I won't stop at one punch. Do you understand me? David nodded quickly, fumbling with the door before slipping outside into the night. I stood there for a long moment, my breathing steadying, my hands still tingling from the impact. Then I turned and walked back inside. Emily was waiting in the hallway, her arms wrapped around herself, her face pale. I stopped in front of her, looking down at her, feeling nothing but cold detachment. He's gone, I said. She nodded, but she didn't say anything. I took a slow breath, my voice calm, controlled. Now we talk. Emily stood frozen in the hallway, her arms still wrapped around herself as if that would shield her from what was coming. Her eyes flicked toward the door, then back to me, her breathing unsteady. I didn't say anything right away. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she had done, to let the silence stretch and press down on her. She had spent months making choices without considering the damage they would cause. Now she had no choice but to face the consequences. I took a step closer, watching as she flinched slightly, her fingers digging into the fabric of her robe. Sit, I said, nodding toward the couch in the living room. She hesitated, like she wanted to argue, to refuse, but she didn't. She walked stiffly to the couch, lowering herself onto the edge like she was preparing to defend herself. I followed, standing in front of her, arms crossed, making it clear there was no escape from this conversation. From the beginning, I said, my voice flat. No excuses. No twisting things to make yourself feel better. Just tell me the truth. Emily licked her lips, exhaling slowly, stalling. I don't know where to start. I let out a short breath, shaking my head. Try where you met him. She nodded, rubbing her hands over her knees like they were cold. At work, she said finally. He works in the same building, just a different department. We ran into each other a few times in the lobby, then started talking more at the cafe downstairs. It wasn't anything serious at first, just small talk. How did it turn into this? Her gaze dropped to her lap, her fingers twisting together. I don't know, she murmured. It just... No, I cut in sharply. Don't say it just happened. That's what people say when they don't want to take responsibility. You made a choice. Tell me why. She swallowed hard, her shoulders rising and falling with her shaky breath. I was lonely, she admitted. You were always busy. You stopped paying attention to me the way you used to. It felt like we were just going through the motions. I clenched my jaw, letting the words settle, feeling the sting of them. So instead of talking to me about it, you went and found someone else? Emily's eyes snapped up to mine, defensive now. I tried talking to you, Daniel. So many times. You brushed me off. You always had something else to do. I let out a sharp laugh, not because it was funny, but because of how pathetic it all sounded. So your solution was to start fucking someone else? She winced, like hearing it out loud made it worse, like she wanted to soften what she had done. It wasn't supposed to be that, she whispered. I didn't plan it. We just talked. It felt good to have someone listen. And then what? He listened, and suddenly you ended up in bed with him? Emily's jaw tightened, and I saw the flicker of anger in her eyes now, like she was getting tired of being cornered. It wasn't like that. Then explain it to me, I shot back. Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like that. She exhaled through her nose, looking away again. It was a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to turn the stove off, I said coldly. You made a decision. Repeatedly. For months. That's not a mistake. She bit her lip, nodding slightly. I know, she admitted. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. I watched her for a long moment, trying to feel something other than rage, other than disgust. But there was nothing else left. I had spent years trusting her, believing in our marriage, thinking that no matter what, we would figure things out together. And now, I was sitting across from a woman who had betrayed all of that and was only sorry because she got caught. Did you ever think about telling me? Emily hesitated, then shook her head. No. The honesty in that single word cut deeper than anything else she had said. Not once had she even considered coming clean, not until I forced it out of her. That told me everything I needed to know. I nodded slowly, stepping back, running a hand over my face as I processed everything. I can't stay in this house with you, I said finally. Emily's head snapped up, panic flashing in her eyes. Daniel, wait. No, I cut her off, shaking my head. You don't get to ask me for anything. Not after this. She sat there, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to find the right words, but there were none. There was nothing she could say to fix this. I turned, walking toward the stairs. I needed space. I needed to get out of this house. But first, I needed to pack a bag. Because I wasn't spending another night under the same roof with her. I walked into the bedroom, grabbed the duffel bag from the closet, and tossed it onto the bed. My hands were steady, my movements quick, deliberate. I wasn't thinking about what I would say to her after this, or whether I'd come back later to figure out the details. Right now, I just needed to leave. I opened the drawers, pulling out shirts, throwing in jeans, socks, anything I could grab without having to think too hard. I didn't care what I packed. I just needed enough to get through the next few days, maybe a week. Emily appeared in the doorway, her breath shaky, her arms still wrapped around herself like that would somehow make this easier to deal with. She didn't step inside, just stood there watching me, her voice uncertain when she finally spoke. Where are you going? I didn't look at her, just kept grabbing clothes. Somewhere that isn't here. Her voice was quiet, like she was scared to push too hard. You don't have to do this. That made me stop. I turned to face her, the duffel bag half full, my patience completely gone. Are you serious? I asked, my voice sharper than before. You think I should just stay? Sleep next to you like nothing happened? Pretend I didn't just throw a man out of my garage who's been fucking my wife. Emily flinched at my words, her lips parting like she wanted to respond, but I wasn't interested in whatever excuse she was about to throw my way. I grabbed a handful of clothes from the closet and shoved them into the bag. She shifted slightly, her hands gripping the doorframe. I just mean, maybe we can talk before you decide to leave. I let out a slow breath, closing my eyes for a second before turning back to her. We already talked, I said, my voice controlled but firm. You made choices, Emily. You didn't just slip up once. You didn't panic and make a single bad decision. You kept making them, over and over. And you never planned to stop, did you? She didn't answer, just looked away. That was all I needed to see. I zipped the bag shut, throwing the strap over my shoulder as I stepped past her. She didn't move, just let me walk past, her breathing unsteady, like she was trying not to cry. As I reached the stairs, she finally spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. Where are you actually going? I kept walking. I don't owe you that. The silence behind me stretched as I reached the front door. I hesitated for a brief second, just long enough to hear the sound of her slow, uneven breathing. Then I stepped outside, closing the door behind me without another word. The night air hit me as I stepped outside, the silence of the neighborhood making everything feel even heavier. I walked down the driveway without looking back, my grip tightening around the strap of my bag. My car was parked where I had left it that morning, a place I had always thought of as home, a place that now felt like the last place I wanted to be. I tossed the bag into the passenger seat, slid behind the wheel, and just sat there for a moment, staring ahead, my fingers gripping the steering wheel. My entire body felt tense, like it hadn't caught up with what had just happened, like it was still trying to process the fact that everything I had built with Emily had just collapsed in a single night. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't need to check it to know who it was. I pulled it out anyway, glancing at the screen. Emily. I let it ring. The moment the call ended, another message popped up. Please don't just leave like this. We need to talk. I turned the phone over in my hand, staring at the message. There was nothing left to talk about. She had done what she did, and now she had to deal with the fallout. I placed the phone face down on the console, started the car, and pulled away from the house. I had no plan, no destination, just a need to get as far away as possible. The streets were quiet, the glow of streetlights casting long shadows over the pavement. My mind kept replaying everything from the last few hours, every word, every look on Emily's face, every excuse she had tried to give. I pulled into an empty parking lot near a convenience store, killing the engine, resting my head back against the seat. My phone buzzed again. Another message. I know you're angry. I know I messed up. But we can fix this. Please, just talk to me. I clenched my jaw, my grip tightening around the phone. She still didn't get it. This wasn't something that could be fixed. This wasn't a fight that would blow over, something we could work through. She had broken something that couldn't be repaired. And the worst part was, she had never planned on telling me. She would have kept lying, kept sneaking around, kept pretending everything was fine while I walked around completely blind. The only reason we were here now was because she had finally been caught. I stared at the message for a long moment before finally typing a response. There's nothing left to say. We're done. I hit send, tossed the phone onto the passenger seat, and leaned forward, running my hands over my face. A few minutes later, another buzz. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. Whatever she had to say, it wouldn't change anything. The truth was, I didn't know what came next. I didn't know where I would go, what I would do, how I would even begin to move forward from this. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going back. Emily had made her choices. And now, I was making mine.